Hey, thanks for stopping by today. We've got a fun project to do. It's going to be the first one on my brand new Thunder Laser Nova 35 100 watt. I thought since it's just before the 4th of July, a flag theme would be appropriate. So let's check this out. This project I found on Etsy. I'll go ahead and put the link in the description. I have no affiliation with this Etsy seller in any way, but I thought the design was a lot of fun and there's lots of options that we're going to be able to do with this. So check it out. So this round sign is about 10.5 inches across. I've made it out of 1/4 inch Baltic birch plywood and just regular spray paint, nothing special. There's some modifications I'm going to do with this layout. So this particular pattern, you can do two different things. You can use it with the outer ring and just make it as a regular sign, or you can take this outer ring off and we've put holes in strategic places so you can actually use this as a centerpiece for a wreath. And that way you can use these holes to string and use ribbon to go ahead and mount it in the center of a wreath. Works out great. This way you have one design that can do two different functions. There are some tweaks that we're going to make on this particular design. I noticed that these are a little short. We need to extend these a little bit. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, I'm going to take this apart here, and it's not glued together yet. But one of the things that I always do when I'm doing a sign like this is I will scribe the design into the backer plate, and that way my placement for all of my different goodies, you can just barely see them, but it makes the alignment for everything in your sign really easy to follow. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go ahead and take this from scratch. We're going to get into LightBurn. We're going to make, I'm going to take the file coming in from Etsy. Again, there's some minor tweaks that we need to make. I'm going to make this outer ring. Go ahead and show you how to put these holes for supports for a wreath, and also how to make this outer ring. And the nice thing about this design is, you know, your outer ring can be just about any color. Your welcome sign can be just about any color. Same way with the stars. So it's just, that's a personal preference. But the big thing is, if you see that I've lightly scored the design on this backer plate, and once you go ahead and glue all these pieces in place, you'll see that this sign comes together very quickly. So let's go ahead and go to LightBurn. We'll bring in that design and we'll get some tweaks going on it. Then we'll go cut it out on the laser and put this together. Okay, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go in, and we've already downloaded the file from Etsy. We've extracted everything onto our local disk location. We're going to go ahead and import that file. And we're going to go ahead and take this third one, Welcome Patriotic Round Laser file, and say open. And this is how it's coming in from Etsy. It's already designed for laser use, which is nice. And so what we're going to go ahead and do and start to take a look at this layout and see if there's any modifications we want to make. So let's go ahead and start to work with this file. The first thing I'm going to do when I open an Etsy file is take a look, and more than likely there's not anything grouped, meaning that all of this is individual. There's no grouping at all. And so because it's so nicely spaced and it's right the way it should be, I don't want to start snooping around this file and start to move these inadvertently. So the first thing I normally do when I download a file from another source is I'll move these around a little bit, and I will group things that I know that have to stay together. Like this half circle with all these stars and the way they're spaced, we don't want to mess that spacing up. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag from left to right, and I'm going to make sure that all of those are highlighted, and I'm going to group them. And that way when I drag this around, I don't have to worry about messing up the spacing on the stars in reference to the half circle. Same way with the welcome sign. You'll notice here that I can grab this and mess this up. And so what we normally want to do is go ahead and get this grouped as well. So when we start to move the components of this sign, I don't have to worry about alignment issues. Okay, so we've got those two things taken care of. Same way with this over here. I'm sure this is individual right now, and I don't want to mess up the spacing there, so I'm going to just go ahead and drag that and go ahead and group it. And now I've got my components to my sign that I can actually, you know, I don't have to worry about it. The first thing I typically try to do is put this sign together digitally to see how it's going to come together, see if there's any tweaks that we need to do, and get it kind of solid in my mind on how I want to go about doing this. So I'm going to rearrange these pieces, kind of put it together like I think it needs to be, and then we can start modifying it and adding some different components that we need. So the first thing I'm going to do is the file itself doesn't have an outer ring, and so that's going to be my spin on this file. I'm going to put a small outer ring. I'll show you a picture here. That's the small outer blue ring that's going to serve two functions. It's going to cover up the holes that we're going to make in the backer plate if you don't want to use it as a wreath insert, and it'll give us room to frame the sign. So first thing I'm going to do is going to come in here. I'm going to use my offset tool. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that my offset is outward and that I'm offsetting at 1/2 inch, and I say OK. And now I have, this is going to be the actual perimeter of the sign itself. And so what I'm going to do is, this is going to become important a little bit later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and group these together. First thing I'm going to do is actually duplicate this because I want this inner ring. Duplicate. You're going to see how I'm going to use that later, and I'm going to go ahead and take this and I'm going to group it, and then I'm going to set it aside for right now. Then we're going to take this and I'm going to start to put this sign together. And so there's a lot of different ways you can do this from an alignment perspective. I'm going to kind of take my time just to be able to make sure that we get it done right. Okay, so I've got the circle lined up, and we're going to go ahead and bring this up and over and in. And I noticed on my sign that I made already that this is a little bit short, meaning that it's inset just a little bit. And what I want to do is I want to be able to make sure that that is on the same plane as this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag this out ever so slightly. Same way here, drag this out. Perfect. So we've modified that just a little bit, so that's that works. This particular frame piece, I can go ahead and what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it aside. I'm not sure that I'm going to need it or use it, so I'm going to just set it aside. And we're going to come down and move the welcome out of the way and this other bar out of the way until I get this set. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to use the period key on my keyboard to rotate it. And then I'm going to go ahead and if I have my object snaps on, I should be able to grab this and it should snap right to the bottom there. And because we've got this grouped, we're moving that all at once, so that looks good. And now I can go ahead and take this bar and move it into place where we need it to be. And I'm going to come over here. You can see that this one is short as well, so I'm going to just drag that over. So it's in alignment. Okay. Now, if we wanted to ensure that the spacing from here to here is the same as it is here, the quickest way I know how to do that is just to go ahead and get into your rectangle tool, generate a tool layer, and come in here and just do a quick, we're going to make that blue just so it's a different color. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and go, okay, is it roughly the same size? If you got your object snaps on, you should be able to snap that, and you can see that this is not the same height. So what we'll do is changed it to the wrong color here. And now I'm going to use my Shift, Control, and my up arrow key to do just minute adjustments. And now we've got the spacing between here and here and here and here the same. If you wanted to know, it looks like it's about less than a tenth, so I think that's going to be just right. And we'll say delete on that. Now we've got our spacing right. Definitely want to save it so far just to make sure that we don't lose any layout process. Now, the next thing we're going to go ahead and do is center our sign. We may have to resize this sign a little bit, which is fine. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and resize it. You want to make sure that your lock is locked here so your aspect ratio doesn't get messed up. And I'm going to shrink this down a little bit, and all I'm going to do is hold my Shift key down, select this circle, and let's put it in the middle here. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stretch this welcome just a little bit. Shift, select it, recenter it. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab my stars, drag them over here. And I'm going to go ahead, from an alignment perspective, I'm going to hold the Shift key down, select the outer circle, and select the horizontal center tool. Come over here, get this. All I'm worried about is horizontal center at this point. And go there. And now we've got to make sure that we've got spacing correct off the edge. We'll take care of that here in just a minute. Okay, so the next thing I've got to do is make sure that the stars are equal from the edge of this outer circle to where the star starts on both sides. And so the quickest and easiest way I know how to do that, again, is to use a tool layer. And you want to visually, you know, does it make sense to you? Does it look good? I'm going to go ahead and get in here, generate a tool layer. And I'm just going to just quickly take a look at that. And that width-wise is just about 1/3 of an inch. And I would like a little bit more than that, I think. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here. I'm going to stretch that out to maybe 0.4. So the width is 0.4. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this. It's already horizontally centered. So all I want to do is move it left or right. I'm going to hold the Shift, Control key down, use my right arrow key, and just move this over. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out of that. I'm going to grab this tool layer, or tool rectangle, I should say. Bring it over, snap it to this edge. Highlight the star, Shift, Control, left arrow. And now we know that the stars, delete that, the stars are centered. Actually, the equal spacing off the sides and centered horizontally. Now, one thing that I can see is that I'm going to have to move the welcome sign over just a little bit. I think I'm going to have to shrink it down just a little bit. Want a little bit of space. So again, I'm going to hold the control key down, the shift key, select the outer ring, bring it in, and now we're looking pretty good. Okay. If I wanted to, I could, sometimes the eye is a little better than the alignment. I'm going to shift it over just one more click. Okay, so now we've got our sign, our elements put together to make our sign. It all looks good, everything's spaced. The only thing that I don't think I'm going to stay with is I think I want to move these bars up just a little bit closer to the flag component. So I'm going to do Shift, Control, and up arrow, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to do the same here. Shift, Control, down arrow, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that'll give us some good spacing. The good way to do this, if you measure this like we did, and you get your calipers out and just open the jaws of the caliper up to what you had, what your spacing was, it'll tell you, it'll give you an idea on what it was. I was at 0.08 on the spacing here. I looked on my calipers and that was just a little bit too wide, so I backed it down some. All right, so now we've got our design kind of laid out, our components. And so the next step that we're going to do is, in my mind, one of the most critical steps, and that's to go ahead and lay out the back plate for our sign. The rest of it's going to be pretty straightforward. But this next step that we do in our layout of the backer plate and setting up a scoring line to outline all of our design elements will make putting this sign together much easier. So let's go ahead and do that now. The next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and I use red as a cut layer. Okay, and so what I want to do before I start taking this sign apart and getting ready to generate my backer plate, I want to copy all the elements, or duplicate all the elements and turn them blue. That's going to be my score layer. And so before I move any of these components, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select each component, turn it to blue, and then what I will do, once I get everything turned to blue, I will go ahead and turn the red layer off. And that way I can group the blue layer and pull it aside, and we will have our backer plate generated. So that's what we're going to do next. So the first thing I'm going to do, we're going to go ahead and zoom in here, and I'm going to select this section is one component. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to right mouse click, duplicate, and come down here and turn it blue. I'm going to come to this, duplicate, turn it blue. Do that with all of the components. Now I could hold the shift key down and select all of these components at once if I wanted. And won't let me do it. So we'll do it one at a time. Duplicate, blue. Duplicate, blue. Duplicate, blue. And even though this takes just a few minutes, this will save you a ton of time when it comes to putting your sign back together, because you will have an outline of where all these components go, and there's no guesswork. You don't have to worry about, is it straight? Does it line up? There we go. Okay, so I've got all of my components done. And so right now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to turn off the red layer completely. That way I can go ahead and come over here and just group this whole thing. And what I'm going to be able to do is I'm going to be able to pull it over here and then turn the red back on. And that way I haven't messed this up yet. So this is going to be our score section. You're going to see how this all falls together here in just a minute. Okay, so this is our score line, what I'm going to be able to do is I'm going to go ahead and take myself a little real estate here. I'm going to go ahead and take this, duplicate it, bring it over here. And if you have your object snaps on, it should snap to the center here. Okay, and so what I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm going to go ahead and ungroup this ring. I'm going to go ahead and delete this inner ring because we won't need it. And so now we've got, this is the perimeter. This is where the laser is going to cut out our line, and it's going to go ahead and score all of that. But here's the deal. We don't really need it to score all of the stars. So what we'll probably do is just go in and delete those and then delete these, because the only thing I really need is this perimeter for the top and the bottom. And so we'll probably go ahead and do that now. I'm not going to bore you with doing that, but when we come back, this will all be deleted, and we'll start to put the holes in the perimeter so we can use this file as a centerpiece in a wreath if we wanted to. Okay, we've gone in and we've removed all the stars. We've removed the internal portions of the text, and we've removed the bars on the lower part of the flag. There's no reason for those to be scored because the only thing we worry about is kind of the alignment on the outside for all of the different individual components. So this is now ready to be cut out, at least the backer piece. So it took us a little time to go ahead and generate this scribe information, but you're going to see how quick this sign comes together if you just take a few minutes and do that. With in my particular case, I'm not real used to this 100-watt laser yet, but I've only cut one piece with it. But we're going to go ahead and scribe it at 500 millimeters per second at 10% maximum power, 8.5 minimum power. It's going to be set to line. And all we want is a faint outline. We don't need this to be deep or burnt. I'm going to go ahead and when this gets cut out, I'm going to go ahead and sand this a little bit to make it even less evident. So this piece right now is ready to go. The only other thing we've got to do now is I'm going to go ahead and make sure this is grouped so we don't mess up the alignment in any way. And then the other thing that we can do now is we can go ahead and take these components apart and align them so we can get them ready for our piece of wood. So what we'll do is I'll go ahead and take this apart, get all my components lined up. The other thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to change this outer ring. Right now, if I take this outer ring that would be cut out a piece of a plywood, you'll notice that it's going to butt up right against the edge. Well, there's no space here. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and move that, or I'm going to change that, because we want a little bit of space between the flag components and the outer ring. So I'm going to go ahead and ungroup that. I'm going to go ahead and delete this. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to say offset it. And we're going to go inward. And we're going to say 0.3. And now, if I go ahead and regroup this again and try it, you will see that now we've got some space between our ring and our flag component. That might be a little bit too much. Might want to go 0.4. Yeah, let's change that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this out of here to make sure I don't grab the wrong component. And ungroup that. Delete that. Select this. Go to offset. It was at 0.3. Let's make it 0.4.
ungroup it. Drag it over. Yeah, it's going to be about right, I think. Okay, so that's our other component. That'll be our ring. It's already red, so we can leave that alone. And so we've got this component all ready to cut out. We've got our ring all ready to cut out, and then we've just got to pull these components out and get them ready to cut out. Welcome sign. I'm going to go ahead and arrange these the way I think they need to be arranged to cut them out. And the next thing we're going to do is go to the laser and get them cut out. Okay, I've got one last thing to do before we go ahead and take this to the laser and cut it out. And it's to put a series of holes around this perimeter edge to be able to use this sign as a centerpiece in a wreath. And so knowing how to do this is a real handy skill. And so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead, and I don't care what size of circle. I'm going to hold the shift key down, and I'm going to make a perfect circle. And I'm going to make that red. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move this, and this is just temporary. I'm going to take this and I'm going to drop it right in the middle of this circle. And so what I want to be able to do, I've grouped all this, going to have to ungroup it, is I want to make sure that this circle is right in the middle of this circle. And you're going to see what we're doing here in just a minute. So we're going to just verify that that's in the middle now. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make another circle. In this circle, I'm going to hold the shift key down so it's a perfect circle. And I'm going to make it about 0.20. And I'm going to take this circle and I'm going to move it over here. That might be just a little bit big, so we're going to go ahead and, I don't know why it's 0.35. Let's go 0.20. There we go. And what I want to do is I want to vertically center this, at least to start. And so I know that that's vertical. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to move it up just a little bit. Shift, Control, arrow up. To make sure that that's about where I want it to be. And so here's what we're going to do. We're going to take that circle and we're going to wrap it around this perimeter. And this is where we use the circular array tool. It's a great tool if you learn how to use it. It's right down here. And so here's what we're going to do is I'm going to select the little circle first. I'm going to hold the shift key down and hold the or select the second circle. And what you're saying here is that I want this to wrap around this. And so I'm going to select those two. I'm going to go to my circular array tool. And now it's just a matter of how many of these copies do you want? How many holes do you want? Well, that's a personal preference. It just depends on how many ribbons you're going to put through these holes to attach it to a wire frame to support this in the middle of a wreath. So I'm going to say that, 10 ought to be plenty. And we're going to say okay. And now when we go ahead and cut this out, it's also going to cut these holes. The other thing I'm going to do is come in here and get rid of this. This was just a reference. And now I'm ready to go with cutting this file out. So we've got our blue layer first because we want this to be scored before we cut this circle out. And then we'll go ahead and you notice that I nested all of the other flag components inside this ring. You see that we've got plenty of room. We're going to be able to have very little waste here other than just the text. And I could actually take this text and, do it on a separate piece if I didn't want to take any more wood. So our cut's going to be at 16 millimeters per second at 80% power. Again, I've only cut one other, just the flag project on this new machine. So it worked great. We're going to try it and go from there. My score lines are going to be 500 millimeters per second at 10%. and let's see what she looks like. So next we're going to go to the laser and get this cut out.
Okay, so I've got this thing ready to go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to make sure that I am in user origin and I've got a top left radio button clicked. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to drive my laser head over to where I want to start the project in the upper left hand corner. I'm going to go ahead and select origin on my controller. Then I'm going to go ahead and just select my frame button just to make sure it's going to fit. So I'm going to select frame. And you're going to see that it's going to do the outline to make sure that I've got enough wood everywhere. That looks good. So I think we're ready to go ahead and send her to the laser. Here we are cutting out the stars. This I'm running about 45 pounds of pressure. I've got an external air compressor hooked up to this Nova 35100 watt. Additional air pressure makes a huge difference when you're cutting a little bit thicker materials. It gives you an overall cleaner cut by far compared to low pressure. One thing I really like about the Thunders is you have the ability to change your air pressure right here. With these needle valves. It's a great feature. A lot of people don't realize monitoring your air pressure for whether it's engraving or cutting can make a huge difference in your overall product. We'll check back when she's all done. Okay, she's all done. She took about 11 minutes and 5 seconds. So only 6 seconds off the estimated time, I think, something like that. The first thing that I do before I pull anything off the laser is I just want to make sure that everything is cut out. Because if it's not cut out, you can go back and use the Start Here function in the preview window. I did a video on that and it will save you a ton of material and a lot of time. But what you want to do is just make sure, just tap along and make sure that all of your components are loose. If they're not, you have the ability to just go back and cut out that small portion that's not cut out. And it's called Start From Here and it's in the preview window. Like I said, I'll put a link to the video up top and in the description as well. But you can see, man, nice clean cuts. Okay, we're going to go ahead and take this off the laser. I'm going to give this a quick sanding, and then I'm going to put on some walnut stain on this front side and let it dry. And then it's just a matter of painting the components and placing them, and that'll be next. Well, we got everything sanded up and ready to go, so we went from this. Here's all the components roughly placed. You can either leave the stars in or out and color the back panel. Personal preference to this. What a fun project. I hope this information was helpful, guys. If you please like and subscribe, I'd sure appreciate it. Have a happy 4th of July, and we'll see you next time.